Good morning.
Good morning, John.
Now, hands up who's getting enough sleep. And the rest of you are doing it right. Okay. So, this morning, more leading ladies, more wonderful characters, some of the female disciples of God that give us cause for inspiration. This morning, Jephthah's daughter. Thank you for showing interest in the books. More than half of them have gone, nearly 2/3 of them have gone. We have 2/3 of the Bible school has gone, so hopefully we're on track to clear the decks and not leave me with extra luggage to drag home. Jephthah's daughter. A story I think we know well. If not, I'll summarize it very briefly. A warrior, a faithful man who fights for Israel, is up against an Ammonite invasion. And before the war, for reasons as yet unexplained, he makes a vow. And he says, Lord, if you see me favorably and grant me favor and success in this military exercise, and allow me to be victorious in the war, then when I go home, whatever first comes out of my house, I will sacrifice to you. And the phrase he uses is, as a burnt offering, I will sacrifice to you. And he goes home, and seemingly unsurprisingly, the first thing out of his house is his one and only child, perhaps predictably, to welcome father home. He is seemingly surprised and understandably distraught, and this is where her role in the story is small and yet primary. She steps forward and says, you have made a vow to the Lord. You must honor this vow. Do to me as you have vowed. And very deliberately, obscurely in the scripture, it says with almost deliberately clumsy language, and he did to her as he had vowed, without telling you anything about what he did. So it's deliberately mysterious. It's put before us as a mystery. And this is the only one of the talks that perhaps dates back a bit in my own library, because the things that I've been interested in over the years include mysteries, little murder mystery riddles that you have to solve. I've always loved that, and there's plenty of those in the scriptures. I've also been always interested in reasons why people hate the Bible, right? The technically flaws and the problem passages and reasons why people say, I could never believe in your God, and here's why. This story ranks as primary amongst them. And more recently, unsung heroes, or to use their other term, heroines. And my batteries are fine, but I feel...
Right.
Well, maybe it's not. Maybe I'm shutting down.
No.
If that happens, Brother Christian, usual role, you jump up and finish off. It was low battery when I turned it on. We might have to have, oh, it's died. Technical interlude. I'm fine to carry on, but I guess you're trying to record this as well. Oh, you're still with me today? We'll just await some alternative amplification. So the story starts out obviously as a form of mystery, because even the story as I've told it so far, you'd have to say, why on earth would he even make a vow? What's he doing? He's okay, there's been an invasion of Israel and he wants to fight back on behalf of the Lord. He's a faithful man. But what is this reason to ever make that vow in the first place? Regardless of what it does or what it causes, why do it? And so we can probably go into the first line without losing too much. Problems that arise, thank you, Mark, from the storyline include that his daughter is sacrificed as a burnt offering, whatever that may mean. Another problem and reason that people object to this passage and find it objectionable is that God doesn't seem to intervene. Actually, as usual, he does, very quietly, and we'll see how before the end. And ultimately, the sacrificer, the man who makes this vow is praised and listed amongst the faithful of Hebrews 11. So the questions we ask, is this man whose name is Jephthah, is he participating in human sacrifice? He says, I'm going to sacrifice whoever comes out of my house as a burnt offering. And if so, how can he be acceptable to God? If not, what actually happened to his daughter? And, equally relevant, if this isn't a story about human sacrifice, what is it about? What's the point of the story? Why are we told it at all? Where's God in all this? Is he just a silent observer, as he so often seems to be? Is he just a disengaged, uninvolved, unemotional sidestander? Why does he seemingly not intervene? And equally relevant, is any of this relevant to 21st century discipleship, the discipleship in which we find ourselves? Before this session is out, we want to find, please, satisfactory answers, not just answers, but answers that satisfy us in our discipleships to not just one but all of those questions. Let's see how we do. And the first thing, if you do want to have Judges of chapter 11 open in front of you, I'll tell you right now that there's an opening section of about 10 or 11 verses. And it seems to be, here's some nice, comfortable bio background. And every single one of those verses, of the first 9, 10, or 11 verses, whatever it is, actually is there to give you a clue that you need to solve the mystery. And we'll be stepping through those clues as we go. Who is Jephthah? He's a warrior of the tribe of Gad. He's the son of the region's founder and leader. His father's name is Gilead. The region they live in is Gilead. That's not a coincidence, because that's how the sort of barony ran at that time. If you were the dominant force, you named the area after yourself. Jephthah the Gileadite, we're told, was a mighty warrior, but super relevant, he's a defective son through no fault of his own. He's an illegitimate son. His father's selfishness and self-indulgence means that he's born of a prostitute with whom his father indulged himself, and so he's only a half-brother to all the other brothers who are born of both parents. He is a godly man. He constantly says that Israel have achieved nothing by themselves, and it's only God's hand and God's success that has granted Israel any success. He goes on about this at length, and it's doubtless this attitude and his resulting courage and success from it which is why he's commended for that faith in Hebrews 11. He's not listed in Hebrews 11 because of what happened with his daughter. He's listed for this reason. Let's see how the story starts. Gilead's wife also bore him sons, and when they were grown up, they drove Jephthah away. You are not going to get any inheritance in our family, they said, because you're the son of another woman. Now, if they're dividing up the inheritance, presumably Gilead, the father, has just passed away. And the full sons, the sons of both father and mother, realize we get more cash if we kick one person out. We have good grounds to kick out the half-brother because he's an illegitimate, defective son. So they ran him off. And they ran him off, and he's booted out into essentially bandit country, the land of Tob to the northeast, and he survives, and in fact, not only does he survive, he also prospers and becomes something of a warrior chieftain in that area. Sometime later, the Ammonites have invaded Israel's land, and the elders of Gilead, cryptic, but it's pretty obvious who they are. Gilead is dead. The elders are going to be his sons. So the elders of Gilead, Jephthah's brothers, went to get their half-brother, Jephthah, from the land of Tob. Come, they said, be our commander so we can fight the Ammonites. And Jephthah said to them, didn't you hate me and drive me from my father's house? Why do you come to me now when you're in trouble? Or to translate it to modern English, you've got a nerve, haven't you? You run me off into a country where I'm likely to get killed, and now you're in trouble and you realize I've learned to fight to stay alive. You want me to help you. And this is some time later. We'll realize, because now he seems to have a daughter who's at least of teenage years, we're talking about 20 years later. 20 years later, he's still mad. Fair enough in human terms. It was a grievous sin committed against him. It cost him his inheritance, his livelihood, and could have easily cost him his life. Jephthah still nurtures bitterness against his brothers, now enjoying the status of elders of Gilead. Very relevant. So the elders of Gilead said, "You will be our head over all who live in Gilead. If you come and fight for us, we'll let you be our king, pseudo-king, so to speak." And Jephthah answered, I don't trust you. I don't believe you. Will I really be your head? Really? You guys? I'm supposed to trust you guys? Jephthah doesn't trust the elders of Gilead, i.e. his brothers, but they try and reassure him. The elders of Gilead replied, and they bring God into it now. "Yahweh, the Lord, is our witness. You will certainly be our head." And does Jephthah trust them? Nope, that's still not good enough. So he said, "Okay, if you're going to swear by God, come with me to Mizpah, and you can repeat all those words, the words of your vow that I will be chief, and I will be in charge of you, and I will have authority over you. Come and repeat that at Mizpah." Now, what's so special about Mizpah? There's more than one Mizpah in the Bible, by the way. But what's special about this Mizpah within the land of Gilead, within the territory of Gad, is that it dates all the way back to Genesis 31. And it's the pile of stones. I doubt it was such a neat and tidy tower, but it was the pile of stones put up by Jacob and Laban when they swore an oath before God together. And the point of the oath was, "Lord, I'm making a contract with this man, and I do not trust him at all. So please, you keep an eye on him, because I know that I can't trust him." And Jacob said that about Laban, because he couldn't trust Laban. And Laban said that about Jacob, because he couldn't trust Jacob. And it turns out they were both right. And that's your history of Mizpah. It's where men who don't trust each other make vows before the Lord. And that's why it's before the Lord. Keep an eye on this guy, Lord, because I know if my back's turned, things are going to go horribly wrong. And so Jephthah says, you want to make a promise to me, you guys? Come to Mizpah. That's where we need to be. I need God to keep an eye on you. And so they do. Jephthah insists on getting total control of Gilead and getting total control of his brothers. Now, why does this man insist on getting control? And many of you are sat there saying, sounds like a typical male thing to do. He's just power crazed like so many. But he's not. He's not power crazed. He's not proud. We know that about him. We know that Jephthah's desire from power isn't from pride. He's one of the few people who always recognizes God's hand, even in his own military successes. Here are the examples. I'll let them read them in your own time, but I'll just point out, he's saying, look, Israel didn't take the land of Moab. God did, and he gave it to us. Israel didn't drive out the Amorites. God did, and he gave us the success. If I fight the Amorites, or the Ammonites now, it'll have to be God who wins the battle and gives them to me. Let the Lord, the judge, decide the dispute this day between Israel and Ammon. It's God's hand in everything. We win no successes for ourselves. We have no reason to boast. We have no reason for pride. This is his character. This is why he's in Hebrews 11. And yet, curiously, we find him in a situation where he is demanding to have control over his brothers. He needs the power for his plan because he's got a plan. What's the plan? The plan is his disastrous vow. This is what he now says to God. If you, Lord, give the Ammonites into my hands, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me, when I return in triumph from the Ammonites, will be yours, will be the Lord's, and I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. And this is the core of a mystery that's lasted a long, long time and still rages to this day in many circles, including our own, because he uses this idiom. And we wonder, well, we know what happens to a burnt offering. You set it on fire, fairly obviously. And so we pose the sensible question, did Jephthah intend to perform or even risk human sacrifice by fire? Is that something he's even suggesting? Now, it doesn't help, it's kind of a core part we need to step aside for just a minute and address that. Let's fully remind ourselves of what we should know, that setting our humans on fire is detestable to the Lord. Let's make sure we're all on the same page about that. Ahaz sacrificed his son in the fire, following the detestable ways of the nations the Lord had driven out. So the key word here, it's detestable to the Lord. Here's another example. Israel sacrificed their sons and daughters in the fire, provoking the Lord to anger. They have built the high places, says God, to burn their sons in the fire, something I did not command or mention. It's a lovely little verse in Jeremiah here, because it actually goes on to say something very metaphorical. He says, they've built the high places to burn their sons in the fire, something I did not command or mention, nor did it even enter my mind, says God. And that's hyperbole, isn't it? Because we're saying, God's saying, wow, I didn't even think of that. Well, God can think of anything. So he means it metaphorically. He says, it's so repugnant to me, it doesn't even come into my brain that someone is going to sacrifice their child in the fire. So removed is it from my character. You, says Moses, do all kinds of detestable things the Lord hates. Why, they even burn their sons and daughters in the fire. And let me throw in just one more to completely for overkill. Let no one sacrifice his son or daughter in the fire, son or daughter in the fire. Anyone who does is detestable to Almighty God. And you can see I've underlined and highlighted, this is the same Hebrew phrase, ola Allah, I've forgotten the Hebrew words, doesn't matter, that's used in all 5 instances. If you sacrifice your children in this way by burning them, you are detestable to God. Now, here's what Jephthah said. He said, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me, I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. So it might seem to be nitpicking to you, but at least it's relevant to say, this is not the same phrase as the phrase that's condemned. That which is condemned is setting your children on fire. But Jephthah says a different phrase. He says sacrifice as a burnt offering. And in fairness, you may be sat there thinking, what do you think happens to a burnt offering? They don't just smear it with aloe vera, you know. The thing goes up in flames. I get that, but it is notable that the phrase he uses isn't the phrase that's condemned. So as a consequence, we realize this may mean something else. But before we do that, let's completely exonerate Jephthah. There are still debates raging to this day about whether or not Jephthah sacrificed his daughter by fire. He absolutely did not, and I'm not just abusing the platform to throw my own voice at you. We can prove this from the Bible. There aren't many things you can actually prove. Prove is a word that certainly as a scientist I would use extremely carefully. Only within an enclosed system, usually a mathematical one, can anything be proven. But when you're dealing with the pronouncements of God, if you assume God is always true to them, then we can actually prove it. It's this verse in Ezekiel that you need. So if you have any remaining doubts about whether anyone caught fire in Judges 11, this verse in Ezekiel 20 insists on taking that away from you. God is speaking. When you offer your gifts, the sacrifice of your sons in the fire, you continue to defile yourselves. Am I to let you inquire of me, house of Israel? As surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, I will not let you inquire of me. Let me translate. If you sacrifice your children in the fire, I will not even listen to your prayers. Satisfy yourself that that's a reasonable take on these verses here, that I haven't accidentally wrested the scripture in some way. Why is that helpful? It's helpful because Jephthah prayed to God. Let the Lord the judge decide the dispute. He appeals to God. Lord, you decide. Who wins today? Israel, Ammon. I know it's entirely in your hands and nobody else's. Look at the answer. Then the Spirit of the Lord, that's the Holy Spirit, there aren't any others, the Holy Spirit came upon Jephthah. So God listened to Jephthah's prayer, answered Jephthah's prayer, and as it happens, answered Jephthah's prayer favorably. But he's already promised, God has promised, if you're even thinking about setting fire to your kids, I won't even listen to your prayer. Therefore, the fact that God listens and answers to Jephthah's prayer proves, via Ezekiel 20, proves he was never going to burn anyone. Like I say, it's rare that speakers, I commend speakers who say, I don't want to be dogmatic about that. That's usually a healthy attitude. It's very rare you can afford to be dogmatic. Here's one of the very rare occasions where we can. I can be dogmatic. Jephthah did not intend to burn anyone. I can look into the intentions of the heart of a man long dead. How? Only because of the reliability of God in his promises and his behavior. God gives us that answer. Okay, fine. So he didn't set fire to anyone. He didn't even intend to set fire to anyone. So what did he intend? He must therefore be using the phrase burnt offering as an idiom. And indeed he is. But what does the idiom mean? And this is where we can have different opinions. Perhaps the most helpful thing to do is say, well, what were the characteristics of the burnt offering? One was flames, but we know that that one's out the window. So what were the other characteristics of a burnt offering? Here it is from Leviticus 1, and we can summarize. The characteristics of a burnt offering was that it was a free will offering, generally. It could be mandated at times. It was generally a free will offering. That's consistent with what Jephthah's planning. God hasn't commanded it. He said, I want to give this to God. The subject had to be a male without defect. That is going to be stunningly and ironically relevant. Jephthah knows that. He knows his scriptures and his religious traditions very well. And the sole unique characteristic of a burnt offering is that all of it, the whole animal, was used. That's not true for any other offering. Only the burnt offering used the whole animal. The sole unique characteristic was this sense of wholeness and entirety in the offering. So therefore, if Jephthah is going to give something as a burnt offering, it means he plans to give a male without defect to the Lord wholly, or if you like, forever. So this, I suggest to you, is the meaning of his vow. This is his plan. And we've actually seen someone else in the scripture already do this. Who will later do this. There's someone else in the Bible who also offers as a burnt offering, just doesn't use that phrase. Her name is Hannah. Consider what Hannah's doing here. She wept much because she was unable to have children and prayed to the Lord and made a vow saying, O Lord Almighty, if you will only look upon your servant's misery and remember me and give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life. The phrase burnt offering doesn't show up, but it's exactly the same type of sacrifice. It's a free will offering. She doesn't have to do that. She offers it for free. What's being offered is a son who hasn't grown up and made any decisions in life. He is a male at this point without defect. He's just a child. And he's going to be given for all the days of his life. He's going to be given wholly. A male without defect, given as free will for life. That's the burnt offering. Now, if Hannah had used the phrase burnt offering, we'd been arguing about what she did forevermore, just like we are with Jephthah's daughter, but she did use different language. But the gift is the same. Hannah is offering her firstborn son, turns out to be Samuel, for temple service or for tabernacle service for the rest of his life. Therefore, that's what Jephthah was doing. Let's see how this works out. When Jephthah returned to his home in Mizpah, who should come out to meet him but his daughter, dancing to the sound of tambourines? She was an only child. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and cried, "Oh, my daughter, you've made me miserable and wretched." Yeah, it's her fault. Sorry. "Oh, my daughter, you have made me miserable and wretched because I have made a vow to the Lord that I cannot break." And your reaction has to be, how stupid are you? How could you not expect that the first person out of your house when you come home at least could have been, and most likely would have been, your very own daughter? But there's a clue as to what's really happened, because we might have the wrong picture in our heads. And the clue is on the screen in front of us. And there's the clue. Why is that a useful clue? It is the place of the vow. It's not the place that it is that matters, Martin. It's the place that it isn't, to be even more cryptic than the scriptures. It's not his home. Jephthah doesn't live in Mizpah. We know this from the intro. He lives in Tob.
But they went there to reconcile the family reconciliation.
Yeah. Don't get slides ahead of me now, Martin. Come on now. Behave yourself. Jephthah doesn't live in, I don't think that fast, you do. Jephthah doesn't live in Mizpah. He lives in Tob. You might say, well, okay, if he doesn't live in Mizpah, then the Bible's wrong to start with to say his home is in Mizpah. There is one other place where, I'm talking to you now. You live somewhere, and there's another place where you don't live that you call your home. And what can that be? Your parents' home, right? You may have moved out of your parents' home 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 25 years ago. If they're still alive and with you, when you go back to visit them, wherever that may be, and for me it's 6,000 miles, I might still say, I'm going home, just to go see my folks. Right? That's the only other place on earth you could ever call your home, the place you moved out from. This is the family home. This is the capital of the region of Gilead. This is where Gilead lives. It's where his brothers now live. His family home is in Mizpah. His daughter isn't there. Caveat to follow, right? His daughter doesn't live in Mizpah. His daughter won't be in Mizpah. His daughter will be safely ensconced in their house in Tob, 30 miles away. That's about 2 days' travel. His daughter is not at risk, thinks Jephthah. The only people left in his family home, now that Gilead is dead, is going to be those self-same brothers who threw him out of house and home 20 years ago, and he's still mad about it. He's targeting one of his brothers. His plan is to send that brother into temple service for life, and thereby extinguish that brother's lineage. Here's the problem. God was paying attention, and God decided to mix things up for him. Who should come out to meet him but his daughter, dancing to the sound of tambourines? Why was Jephthah's daughter in Mizpah? We might say, well, was it some cunning plot by the brothers to defend themselves against Jephthah's vow? Certainly not. For one thing, Jephthah didn't disclose his vow to anyone except God. And in any event, if he felt his brothers had outsmarted him again, he would feel rage. He doesn't feel any rage, he feels guilt, and rightly so. I suggest to you, it's her idea. And the only clue I have is the tambourine. What does the tambourine remind you of? Miriam. Miriam's song. Miriam's song was written why? Just for fun? No. There'd been a mighty military victory effected by God. Israel has survived, indeed defeated Egypt, and Miriam writes a song about it and dances with tambourines. Jephthah clearly knows his Israel's history. He's just recited a whole lot of it in Judges 11. So his daughter has been well raised. And she's thinking, my father's going to war. My father has prayed to God for victory. God will grant it. She's as faithful as her father. What a great idea. I'll go back to the family home and surprise my father. He'll be ever so pleased, because I'll come dancing out of the house with tambourines like Miriam herself, and we shall celebrate the military victory that God has given us. And not only that, my father's been mad at his own brothers for 20 years. What a fantastic opportunity to put all that mess back together. Miriam the prophetess dances at Egypt's destruction. Jephthah's daughter dances at Ammon's destruction. What an excruciating irony. She's planned this wonderful celebration. It's going to be the happiest day in Israel, and certainly for her family, and the whole thing is ruined because her father has a carefully plotted revenge. And the two plans have come together, and everything happy about the day is destroyed. Let me just reiterate what we've solved so far. I think we've solved this mystery beyond a reasonable doubt. Jephthah is a godly man. The fact that God answers his prayer proves he was never intending human sacrifice. Ezekiel tells us that. But Jephthah's problem is that he's embittered against his brother for 20 years or more. He hates them for what they did to him. So he insists on establishing total authority in Gilead, which gave him power over his brothers. That's why he made them swear to the Lord at Mizpah, I will have power over you if God sends me back victorious. Therefore, he vows to God privately to devote someone from that family home in Mizpah to the Lord. And he goes home rubbing his hands in glee to see which of the brothers, he probably doesn't mind which, comes out of the house first to be dispatched to the temple and have his genealogy extinguished. And he vowed to offer them as a burnt offering, a male without defect. Isn't that beautifully delicious? The burnt offering says it has to be a male without defect. And he can stand before his brothers and say, you'd be the first to say it can't be me then. I'm a defective male, aren't I? I'm an illegitimate son. I'm so defective you had to boot me out of the family. Well, for my burnt offering, I need a male without defect. I need a perfect male, like one of you boys. Beautiful, isn't it? I'm enjoying it even now. It's great. What could possibly go wrong? Unfortunately, God is listening, and he condemns such an evil plan. So Jephthah planned vengeance on one of his brothers by sending him into lifelong temple service. That's the summary. I'm going to leave that summary there for about 30 seconds while I have some very necessary water. You guys have a stretch, because whilst we've solved the mystery, the essence of the story is still before us. Sure. So, as ever, God is at work for his people. Unfortunately, a man has got a little bit above himself, a little bit above his own authority, and has created a huge disaster. It is time there for our leading lady to take her small but powerful role in the story and step forward. My father, she replied, you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me just as you promised, now that the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, the Ammonites. But grant me this one request, she said. Give me 2 months to roam the hills and weep with my friends, because I will never marry. And realize the importance of what Jephthah's daughter's done here. She saved the day. She saved her father. Because if she refuses, and as an adult she probably can refuse and get away from him, he becomes a vow breaker. And God has said, I will not take vow breaking lightly. If you break your vows, you will be truly guilty before me. And Jephthah can be truly guilty before God unless his daughter steps up and saves him. Spot the irony. A father, and many of you are fathers with daughters, a father is supposed to protect his daughter. Every single one of you fathers knows that. And yet here, the daughter has to protect the father from becoming a vow breaker. What a terrible burden to place on the narrow shoulders of this young teenage girl, probably. But she does, and that's why she earns the status of a leading lady within this pantheon of strong disciples we're admiring this week. She saves her father. Okay, you've done something extremely foolish. I'll wear the damage of it, and you will remain guiltless before the Lord. She mourned virginity. She did not mourn the loss of her life, which is an additional proof that she wasn't about to be killed, but I think we've established that confidently already. How old was she? Well, this is clearly a very mature and thoughtful response, and also she's unmarried, and marriage came early in that culture, so probably a teenager. It doesn't matter too much, but probably as young as teenage years. And so we're left with at least one question. Judges 11 is not about human sacrifice. We've learned that. Well, it's about a form of sacrifice. So what is it about? Why is it there? Why is it relevant to us? We can't just say, oh, here's the chapter that isn't about human sacrifice. That's true for most of the chapters in the Bible, obviously. It's about the damage that grudges can do. Grudges were alive and well back in the years of Judges chapter 11. Grudges are alive and well today. They're in your ecclesia. You know that, don't you? Raise a hand if you want to, if you're prepared to, if you've been a victim of a grudge. Yeah, that's a lot of hands. That's why Judges 11 is relevant, because it teaches us how damaging grudges can be. That should have been the happiest day for decades. An invasion of evil people into the land had been repelled by the hand of God, and a godly woman had designed a festival of celebration that could well have resulted in a family reunion as well. And one foolish man, or one godly man having a very foolish moment, wrecked the whole thing because he had a grudge. He couldn't let it go that he'd been mistreated some 20 years before. And not just the damage of grudges, which led to his vow, which was like, I am going to put a person into temple service forever. God isn't fooled. Nonsense, says God. You are not the slightest bit interested, Jephthah, in how many servants there are at the tabernacle. You're taking a pot shot of one of the brothers that you hate. And worse than that, you're taking a pot shot at one of your brothers. You don't have the guts to say it openly, so you're dressing it up as if it's some sort of service to me. What sort of foolish God do you take me for? Don't play me like that. You want to try and play me? I'll play you. Guess who's going to come out of your brother's house? Now look what you've done. You were looking to extinguish a line? You've just extinguished a line, your own. It's your only child, and now she won't have children. We must take care. God isn't fooled. We can fool. I know how to fool people. Nobody mentioned cribbage. But you don't fool God. He sees it all. And the big picture where we can wrap up our class, let's dial out and look at the big picture. And what we see is that abuse comes in cycles. And if you don't stop an abusive cycle, it'll repeat itself. And most everyone in this room knows that already. But let's see that we recognize it in Judges 11. Jephthah's father was Gilead. His mother was a prostitute. What does that tell you? That tells you that Gilead is a selfish man. He's got a wife. Why is he with a prostitute? Simple. Because he can. He's got power. He's the ruler in the area. Who's going to do that to him? We would never have a ruler today who would dally with other women and get away with it simply because he can, and we're lucky for that. But Gilead was not so good. So Gilead indulged himself. And worse still, Gilead, the father, abused his power. His child paid the price. It was Jephthah who got kicked out of house and home, not Gilead. The child paid the price for the father's selfishness. I will make a sacrifice as a burnt offering, says Jephthah pseudo-nobly. But no, he's actually abusing his power that he's got from his brothers, that he's made them swear to him at Mizpah, in order to try and end one of their lineages. Guess who pays the price? It's not really Jephthah. His child paid the price. Both times there was a father who abused his power to enact a personal agenda, and both times a family was broken as a result. Jephthah devotes his teenage daughter to the Lord. Hannah devoted her young son Samuel to the Lord. The time between the two events is difficult to establish. It's a few decades. An average of most of the estimates comes out at about 30 years. Remember, one of our earlier questions is, why doesn't God ever do anything? Why does he just sit around and watch humans abuse each other? God does intervene, usually so quietly that if you're not paying attention, you won't see it. He's building families, as a good father would. Consider, Samuel grew up to respect the Lord at the temple. The boy Samuel continued to grow in stature and in favor with both God and men. Why? Well, of course, he was raised by Eli, raised by the high priest. Marvelous. Not at all. Eli was a terrible father. I normally could never say that, but the Bible gives me insight I couldn't have myself. Eli's sons were wicked men. Well, you can't blame the wickedness of the sons on the father. You can if God tells you you can. And in this case, Eli is to blame, and the Bible tells us so. So what that means is, Samuel didn't grow up to respect God because of Eli's parenting. Someone was at the temple who taught Samuel how to be a godly man. Who was living at the temple then to act as a godly parent to influence the infant Samuel? It's Jephthah's daughter. She's been there approximately 30 years. Interesting, given the fertility cycles or the fertility window of a female. She has doubtless been praying for, release me from my father's stupid vow, let me have a husband, let me have a child. She's prayed for years and years and years, and the answers always seem to be not yet or no, and finally, perhaps her fertility closes, and she realized God has said no. And just when it seems that God has said no, God has said yes. And he provides a mother for an orphan boy. A mother has dedicated her son to the Lord, and a father has foolishly dedicated his daughter to the Lord, and God has brought them together. Jephthah's daughter is at the temple, at the tabernacle, in service, and the infant Samuel is delivered there, or the young Samuel. How long did it take Jephthah's daughter to discover Samuel upon his arrival? 20 minutes? Surely no more. They would have been put together immediately. And it's not just a boy that she gets. She gets to raise Samuel, Israel's last and arguably greatest judge, one of the few men in the Bible that we're never ever seen to sin. I'm not saying he didn't sin, we're just never shown one. So we're shown, in a way, a perfect man. And that's the union. That's where God acts. He sees the innocent and the oppressed, Jephthah's daughter in this case, who had the courage and the bravery to protect the father that should have been protecting her, to release him from potential sin of vow breaking by sacrificing her own family line. And God says, I saw that. And people will condemn me for doing nothing, but actually I will do something. I'll give you one of the greatest sons there's ever been. And people probably won't see it, and they'll still say Judges 11 is a problem passage, and it proves that God doesn't care about us. But you see me, Jephthah's daughter, and I see you. And I find that beautiful.